Hi, everyone. I'm excited to welcome you to this panel discussion from Psycho on closing critical blind spot in your SDLC. I'm Jimmy Shu, field CTO of Psycho. I'm excited to be a host for today's panel discussion. As you can see my voice, I'm recovering from sickness. So this is not my normal voice, so hopefully you guys can still hear me. It's a very exciting topic. And first of all, for those of you in the audience who are new to Psycho in our webinar series, welcome. We have a monthly series where we tackle the big questions that are top of mind for the application security industry. For those who are joining us again, thank you. Welcome again. The goal for today's discussion is to talk about the importance of securing your CI/CD pipelines, as they are the central mechanism to our software delivery process. To help me get started and to tackle this hard challenge, I'm delighted to welcome you to a seasoned cyber professional, a leader, a Psycho customer, Rory, Director of Product Security at Cribble. So, those of you who know me, I'm very passionate as a fellow practitioner in app security. And the role of product security is dear heart to me. I think that's what we need as we evolution as a role, combine that. So I'm just so excited, Rory, that have a fellow product security leader to talk about this. I think speak volume of the credibility here. So Rory, really, really excited. So let's start with some introductions. Can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Sure, absolutely. So I've been in application product security for over a good decade now. Prior to that, I was doing physical security in the military, so it was a fun transition. Uh, this role is a little easier on my knees. So, but you know that we it's similar in that you have a mission that you need to accomplish, and you have people and assets that you need to secure. And I've been in management most of my career. Uh, I had the opportunity to transition a couple times during COVID, but application security and cloud security are my bread and butter.
Thank you, Rory. China got two military as already mean, also a fellow veteran. So good to see you. Okay, before we get into it, right? Just top of mind, because I feel like self-supply chain pipeline security has been just a hot discussion, right, in the form of app security. Rory, to you, just initially, why is pipeline security top of mind for you?
Well, well, Jimmy, you know, and I both know that build pipelines are a very attractive target for bad actors. I mean, if I had a nickel for every pen test or incident report that said, uh, so then I popped the CI server and then I pivoted it into production, right? I mean, there are examples out there. One of the biggest ones is SolarWinds. It was 4 or 5 years ago. Still feels pretty recent to me probably because of how bad it was. There was I don't recall if it was disclosed specifically how the, there was a Team City CI server, and it sucked for JetBrains because they got negative press for this. But I mean, it wasn't a vulnerability in their CI server, Team City. It was just a misconfiguration, right? And misconfigurations are part of the OWASP top 10 now. But you know, it's a very it can be overlooked. Uh, you know, you're securing your build pipeline as opposed to like securing production. The build pipeline should always be considered a part of production. And I'm happy to say we've got a really positive story at Cribble that I'm happy to talk about too.
Oh yeah, I want to dive into that, but yeah, to your point, right? I mean, people like to talk about um, the solar wind, and then most recently this Verizon, right? Talking about like its higher standards of software security. As far as I can remember, personally as a fellow practitioner, if you compare it to the press, not just the press and the discussion in industry about app security, if you compare the amount of discussion around scanners securing the code versus securing the pipeline, it's almost unequal, right? Too much emphasis on let's protect the artifact, but to your point, the bad guys knows, attackers knows that the weakness is the pipeline because it's literally the single delivery mechanism to package and deploy all your current any kind of artifacts when you deploy to cloud anywhere, right? Everything is delivered as code, so the mechanism is definitely the weak spots. Um,
Absolutely. And just because it's not internet facing, like you always just have to compromise. You have to make the case to engineering teams, to leadership, to endorse and uh, execute on a defense in depth strategy. Um, I mean, it's important to secure the doors and windows, sure, absolutely, 100%, but you have to monitor everything.
yeah, and to your point, right? Obviously, there's a OWASP obviously did a good job, have top 10 in misconfiguration. There's also a couple of reference out there. We'll talk about it later. But let's start with this. Let's get into some meat of it, right? Um, in terms of securing the pipeline or the SDLC process, what are some of the common blind spots in SDLC, right? In reference to the pipeline, the build system, the deploy system itself, what are some of the blind spots that typically security team must struggle to address?
Maybe I'll answer that by maybe diving into why blind spots occur. I think blind spots often arise from a failure to scale a product security program. I mean, it's vital to get software engineering teams or the teams that support engineering. We have a productivity team at Credible. They manage our CI/CD process, and we can't just say, "Hey, our software is secure," and hang up our hat at the end of the day. They own services that are either the are production adjacent, and we treat them like production, and we have to make sure that the assets in that environment are configured securely, patched, and monitored. Um, and really you scale an application security program or a product security team program. Like the terms are used interchangeably. I usually refer to product security when we're shipping a product on prem, but also in the context of our job is also to secure the cloud environment. Um, it's done through establishing trust in meaningful relationships across engineering team. We're advisors, we're educators, sometimes motivational speakers. And also, you have to build your program uh, to make it developer friendly. You have to select developer friendly tools that can be tuned to minimize noise. No one likes noisy tools. I certainly don't. You get your tools integrated on pull requests. You can use that to drive IDE plugin adoption. You can teach teams threat model when working on architecture design. And it's not difficult, really, to teach the fundamentals of threat modeling. Uh, Someone coined the term evil brainstorming, so I like to use that. Secure coding education, running a security champions program. Um, it's really like I'm just really trying to work my way out of a job wherever I go. But it's really I say that in jest, but really it's about creating a community of folks that are tuned into how security operates, where to report an incident, how to use the tools, what are like do we have what secure coding patterns do we have documented so that as the organization continues to grow, the senior engineers can mentor the junior engineers, and we don't drift from a state of good.
Thank you. Yeah, I like the fact that you focus on the people process and the culture aspect of this. I mean, you can talk about tools all day. You can talk about blind spots in terms of capabilities. We can get to a little bit later, but yeah, I can tell you. I mean, it's obviously I'm taking that as the education, right? The enablement, empowerment, building the trust, extending that into educating them that it's not just what you're producing, what you're getting from, right? where it sources. It's also the configuration of the pipeline that you might have access to. Adding those curriculum into the whole process. But again, good point. If you're not listening, if there's tension, if there's animosity, then yeah, they're not going to listen in. So thank you for highlighting that. And I can't stress enough. I think there's so much discussion on tools. Let's not forget the people and process aspect of it, right? So if it's receptive, then that's one way to make sure that blind spots are addressed. Now, I think you also answered the question of the common challenges, right? We know challenges is obviously when the coach is not there, right? But from a technical capability perspective, from a securing the pipeline, I think we talked about the misconfigurations. Are there any other areas you think commonly there things could go wrong in terms of a weakness, right? We talk about threat modeling, where you threat model a pipeline. What are some of the top two to three areas you think are, other than the configuration of the pipeline system, you think we should pay attention to?
I mean, you can't go wrong with the basics. I mean, centralized authentication, like we use an IDP, an excellent IDP. MFA, we don't support SMS as a MFA factor. We really limit access to our build environment to least privilege. It's always going to be a winning strategy. And it's not necessarily that you don't trust your employees, but your employees can be compromised and then they can do bad things with a stolen identity. And then number three is harden and patch regularly. And I mean, we did those things early on at Cribble, and there there was a conversation had, and we had to explain why we had to, you know, put put in like some hoops to jump through before you can access the build server. Uh, but I mean, it usually is a conversation. It's like anything else. It's like, oh, why do we need to fix this injection vulnerability? Well, most developers are pretty savvy nowadays, but maybe you dive into maybe like a more obscure vulnerability. You have to explain why you have to do something. Uh, but I mean, it's not just enough to just like one and done moment your assets. I'll go ahead and plug Cycode here. We use Cycode to monitor our CI server for anomalous activity. We to make sure that our plugins are kept updated. Our productivity team does a great job. They update monthly, but also in a security role, like we trust, but we also have to verify. Uh, and maybe it turns out that like a plugin will break something, or maybe there isn't an update for a plugin, and there needs to be a conversation about getting a plugin replaced, or figuring out how we can continue using it without like breaking something else in the build, and then when does that work need to be done by? What risk does it pose to use a plugin with a known vulnerability? Is it something that we have to fix within 30 days, or is it something that we can fix because if everything's a high severity issue, then nothing is, right? And so it's important that we pragmatically categorize the severity of issues based upon based upon the whether or not something could actually be exploited or not, right? And and if you do that, and the the work you'll always have a better chance of having the work prioritized on time, because you're being respectful to their workload, you're being respectful to competing business interests, and where security is a type of quality really, and there's other things that the teams have to do, and so I think it's just very important to make sure that you have an honest conversation with the team's security environment. But we've had a great success using Cycode and integrating it with not only our CI/CD system, but our productivity tools as well to monitor for leak secrets. I'm probably preempting a lot of the questions here, but uh, yeah, I'm happy to talk about the how we monitor for and respond to secrets that I mean, everyone does it. I've done it. He who is without sin cast that first stone. Uh, it's so easy, especially if you're not in the practice of doing things securely, or maybe you're brand new out of college and you've never used AWS Secrets Manager before, or HashiCorp Vault, and it's not complicated systems to learn. And yes, is it slightly more work to follow good hygiene? Yes, but that is the cost of doing business. Uh, and unfortunately, we just treat it as an incident. If something like serious gets leaked, it's like you gotta revoke that immediately, and it's not, you'll get to it within like a week. It's drop what you're doing now and go revoke it, and then put the secret somewhere where it's supposed to be stored. And we're really big on, all of Cribble uses enterprise password manager. We're always hammering the importance of using that, and making sure that users are educated. It's like half the battle, most of the battle.
Interesting, always thank you for the lengthy response, right? It's a great discussion. I wonder what the audience is thinking, right? If they think what I'm thinking, um, you know, I remember having a conversation like, how do you secure the pipeline? Such a foreign concept. But if you listen to operationally how you guys do it, if you think about it, it's no different than anything else. You just include that as part of that, right? You talked about treating it as another critical system that control the access, limiting access, right? Operationally, as far as patching, assessing what's exposed, right? Adding onto the threat model, monitoring, continuous monitoring to detecting anomalies. Because if the attacker targeting the build system, the build system makes some changes, you're going to pick up if you monitor, right? Obviously, very glad that you're able to operationalize cycle for that purpose. You also mentioned, I think it's very important to highlight that the hygiene, right? Um, it's crazy, right? Like you don't just have to learn a programming language. Remember when I was studying computer science in college, you got to understand how to deploy the cloud. You got to have access to all these cloud services as part of full stack development. I mean, how do you expect, right? A developer who is focused on innovating to remember how to do all these things, and you have access to it. It's not only whatever that. Hopefully, you're using a existing encryption library, right? Versus trying to write your own, God forbids. But like access key to the clouds, services, all that you have access to that. But obviously, detecting secrets, hygiene in protecting secrets, certainly it to me is one of those crown jewels that the attacker can use to compromise the pipeline. So thank you for saying that. So all that to say that it's the same practice. It's just extending that to the build systems, ensure that key management, right, secrets management is treated no different than anything else, but ensure that there's coverage capability like a ASPM like Psycho that can cover that, right?
That's right. And I mean, we've built Psycode into, we've got a playbook in like we in our PSER program. So we monitor a set of tools for anomalous events and develop SLA on responding to that in a very uh, we have the alerting to be very prominent and loud, and we always have someone on call to make sure that we're monitoring for and responding to those alerts. Um, it's again, it's the price of doing business. You
Yeah,
don't you don't want to you don't want to be late to the party when something bad is happening. You need to be
I
able to
like
respond.
when you say trust verify monitoring because if I anything like nuggets for the audience, right? I always say it doesn't matter your code artifacts, your cloud services, your pipeline. You cannot secure by just scanning remediation. You have to monitor, right? See,
That's right.
ongoing detect, continuous monitoring. because things will change. So yeah, it's just one nugget for the audience, right? You validated. You have to make sure monitoring of your pipeline should be part of your securing the pipeline strategy.
And maybe I should take the opportunity to plug Cribble too. So Cribble saves security and IT teams a silly amount of money, really, when you consider the cost of ingest pricing for a lot of solutions out there. I mean, you can select the exact data elements you need at whatever boundary you need to pull it from. You can encrypt and normalize the data on the fly. You can use Credible Search to allow you to search and analyze your data wherever it resides, and you can figure out what data is actually relevant for you to pull into uh, to your SIM, for example, or a powerful tool which
Hey, everyone looks like Rory is having connection issues. So let's just give it a minute. So while we wait for Rory to dial back, just for audience, if you're still listening, one of the things that we talked about, right? We heard what Cribble said about what they did in terms of practices of security pipeline. Obviously, great for them to see how they have operationalized a ASPM tool like Cycode. But um, aside from the technology, another thing that for the audience, when you think about, hey, what reference, what industry best practices can I go look for as part of reference to see how am I going to secure the pipeline? What are some of the scripts? Oh, there you are. Are you back? I think you're on mute.
there, technical difficulties. Not sure what
Okay,
happened.
no problem. So, Rory, I was while you were reconnecting, I was telling the audience that we talked plenty about how Cribble did it. We talked about the ASPM tool. I was going to give audience little nuggets around what other industry best practice reference that they can look for, right? In terms of a checklist, in terms of strategy, how to secure the pipeline. I was going to say that there are two references I recommend, and feel free to add more. The first one is, as we talked about the OWASP, right? OWASP is definitely a great resource for anything. I mean, they have lots of active contribution to AI stuff today. But as far as, in addition to the OWASP top 10, which you all know, there's a OWASP CI/CD top 10, right? Specifically to CI/CD pipelines, thanks to the co-founders at a company, not going to mention name here, that acquired by Palo Alto, but it's a good reference. Another thing I would recommend, I don't know what you can use. I know that at Cycle we built a lot of our control checks based on a checklist. Is CIS benchmark. Many probably know CIS benchmark, but how many do you know that there's actually a CIS benchmark um, on software supply chain security that has all the checks and balances, the configuration of the pipeline for all the SDLC stages. Version 1.0 is out there. I know that at Cycle we are contributing version 2.0, but that's a good reference. That's vendor agnostic that can use as checklist. Um, Roy, anything to add to use other than Cycle?
Well, I really appreciate that SciCode has built in support for helping you automate auditing of the SSDF. Some of our very early customers uh, really required us to have a plan to implement SSDF. I mean, this was multiple years ago, uh, and that was really when my team started being built. I was actually one of the later members of the team. Security was embedded is embedded, or product security rather is embedded within engineering in the organization. We have a CISO org too, which we work with very closely. If you saw us working together, you wouldn't know that we were, you know, uh, not exactly joined at the hip org wise, but I it our customers wanted to make sure that we had a plan in place to uh, implement the processes outlined in the SSDF, and we made that a priority as an organization, and we even had a third party come in and audit us and make sure that the processes were fully implemented, and we have a very nice attestation that we have on our trust portal. uh, and this is a 2 year old letter now, but it's an attestation stating that, hey, this vendor, this security firm has looked through our documentation, they've gone through our process with us, and they can confirm that we have implemented those processes. But again, that's a moment in time. It's 2 years ago. You can use the Psycho platform to have to one automate some of those checks, but then also you can use it to put together a full ongoing report that maybe you revisit quarterly or twice a year or something like that. And that's more efficient than bringing in like a third party every like 6 or 12 months to do it, because there's I think there's I think it's important that we did bring that third party in, but then we're also self auditing and making sure that we're keeping all those best practices in place.
Thank you. Yeah, SSTF is a good one, right? SSTF obviously, NIST came out with a couple versions already. It's kind of like the gold standard with the executive order on the software security, all that. So great to hear that Cribble is already adopting that, and obviously combined with the self attestation. And you obviously got a good point, right? And don't wait for external assessors. Yeah, you should always maybe to a point. I remember as a consultant, I do a lot of these audits right in the past. It's great, but because things change so rapidly, right, in our software world, so you want this to be continuous. Part of that is continuously attest, monitor, self-attestation, right, using a helper tool. So thank you for bringing it up. So SSTF, to me, it's a good reference. It has supply chain section as well as pipeline. Another thing, as you mentioned, right, I know that Cycle supports is if you're talking pipeline specific, it's salsa, right? Supply chain level for software artifacts. You have self-attestation you can use to attestify your supply chain. So obviously something also Cycle supports, but more you guys using that as well.
Oh, 100%. Oh, we have a supply chain specialist. His job is to make sure that those processes and controls are implemented. And we're a really big fan of Salsa. We just recently started using Guac too. I mean, Cribble has been publishing software bills of material, or SBOMs, with every release for quite a while now. We're very transparent with what goes into our software, and it's the responsible thing to do. Uh, and it. I mean, obviously, yes, we have to keep our dependencies updated, and it's again, it's the price of doing business,
Yeah,
right?
I mean, I can help to promote Cribble here. Like I personally, we talk about SPOM. SPOM is a buzzword, but for organizations, software companies, right, that actually take the effort to actually generate SBOMs, to me, right, in my opinion, as a practitioner, it shows commitment that you have, right, to software security to your customers. So I think it's really good, and I think hopefully audience you get takeaway, right? Not just trust and Cribble, but just see also you see that hey, there are companies as a not only talking about SBOM, they're actually adopting SBOM. So really good that you guys have a success program. Any words of wisdom to share to the audience? How do you even do that with SBOM program?
I'm sorry, reset the question.
Any tips on how to even build a quick guide on building SBOM program? Because it's very important for software supply chain.
Well, right. I mean, if you have a bunch of vulnerable stuff in your code base, you're going to want to fix that before you start advertising, if especially if there's anything exploitable. So, I mean, the easiest way is just to make sure that everything's updated to the latest. You have to account for operational risk. Uh, some dependencies get abandoned, and you gotta have to rip it out and swap it out with something else, and that sucks. But I mean, that's what our customers expect of us. We sell to security teams, security and IT teams, but uh, they demand that we. It is their expectation and demand, their requirement that we are building secure software and we're being transparent about our program. And uh, it's not a matter of if, it's when is that dependency going to be updated. Even, there's a lot of talk about like assessing whether or not, something is actually vulnerable based upon like a dependency, depending on how you use for it. I think that's a very important factor in determining what the actual severity of the issue is in the context of your own application. But you're still gonna have to update it because the customers like, that's cool. I believe that, but like our policy is we're not allowed to use software that use components with known vulnerabilities. So you still have to update it. It might be a maybe not this release, but maybe next release. And we're always really transparent with customers on when we're going to fix things, but or at least I can't make promises on behalf of the business, but we have a really good track record of fixing issues according to our SLI.
Yeah, thank you. I'm glad, to really hearing in, real practice, right? I think takeaway is being transparent, right? To your point, you can do everything you can, which you're going to get into prioritization, but you can fix everything that you can't own, right? Like it's more around showing track records, disclosing what you can do, right, and being transparent about it. I think that's really, really important, for folks to like not idealizing the impossible, but also understand, hey, what works. That's like the middle ground. Now, speaking of prioritization, we got to talk about prioritization, right?
Yeah.
Because you talked about what's actually being used or exploitable or all that, right? I mean, as a fellow practitioner, you know it's one thing you can talk all day about. Hey, let's build some trust with developers. Let's educate them, right? Let's bring them in. Let's enable them. But nothing annoys the developer more when you dump tens and thousands of vulnerabilities from your pipeline, your SaaS scanning, your cloud configuration, your IAC, your container. Here you go. Here's a 10,000 vulnerabilities. Knock yourself out, right? That's not a good way to build trust. So that's why, obviously, the way you mentioned already earlier, and using ASPM, obviously, it's about prioritization. So curious from a cribble perspective, right? I mean, you can always use a tool, but what factors do you guys use, in general speaking, um, any kind of risk scoring, right? How do you basically, essentially, prioritization should be based on risk. What factor is cribble used to prioritize your vulnerability and risks and threats? Yeah, in terms of risk.
Right. So I mean, there's always CVSS, and to be honest, I haven't really reviewed V4 yet, uh, but I think it's out now. But I'm not a huge fan of V3 because it just seemed like no matter how we plug things into the calculator, even with temporal scoring, it just seemed like everything's kind of a high. I'm really excited to see more adoption of the exploit prediction scoring system, or the EPSS. Uh, it's a framework that a company, it's another data point. Like it's used to predict the likelihood that a vulnerability will be exploited in the wild, allowing organizations to actually prioritize vulnerability management in a way more a pragmatic way that really like enables the business. I mean, if you're fussing over every low every month, man, your vulnerability management program is really gonna drag. Fortunately for us in Cribble Cloud, like we've got patching down once a week, so it's never really a problem for us. It's almost on easy mode in a sense, but it allows us to work on other things. So I don't take it for granted at all. For application security specifically, give Bugcrowd a shout out just because I really like their vulnerability rating taxonomy or VRT. They've iterated on that like over a dozen times now, and it's a really good quick reference for mapping like, is this what does the industry consider this type of vulnerability, and then of course it's like take into the context. Is it internet facing? If it's not internet facing, it's definitely the priority is a little lower, right? Do you have to be authenticated? Do you have to be an admin? How complicated is the exploit? Is the exploit where is there a public exploit available? Is the exploit reliable? Will it cause this? Does it cause system instability? There's a lot of factors that go into place. I mean, obviously the answer is just fix it, but it's like, do we need to drop what we're doing now and disrupt the sprint cycle, or can it wait for the next release? Is always a question that we should be asking ourselves, because you hit that red button too many times for the wrong reasons, you're gonna lose traction, and that hurts the program, that hurts the mission. And so it's important to be pragmatic about vulnerability management.
I just love the discussion. I think I literally I can talk all day with you here just about that phone management topic. I would suggest audience, if you got bored earlier, this part from Rory, you might need to replay it back because everything you said, I've done as well as on the other side, being a practitioner, being a consultant. Because to your point, like I'll summarize for you, see if you agree, right? I mean, the obvious insufficient thing to do is just based on CVSS. I think we crap out of CVS. Even more version 4.0 got gaps too. There's plenty of discussions. The easy button of just focus on CVS is critical to the highest of 7.0 is not sufficient. Everything Rory talked about, the EPSS, the so there's also CAV, known exploited vulnerabilities, the exploitability of something, factor in the sprint cycle, all that. So I remember building flow charts, and it sounds like Cribble has a very mature and complicated, which is not a bad thing at all, a way of assessing, prioritizing risk. So it's good to hear, right? The takeaway is that you have to, for the audience, um, apply all these tools and factors and really be deliberate around the process because it is a complex process. It's not just using the critical high and thorough defense. Go through that and then be realistic around remediation.
And and I'll give you like a good example of why you have to be pragmatic about around vulnerability management, and then also like advertise another win that my team delivered this year. Uh, so so we ship Tribble on two Docker images. One is Ubuntu, and if you run Ubuntu through like a Trivy scanner or a container scanner, you're gonna get CVEs. Now the CVEs may not be are not exploitable usually, but they're constantly patching CVEs. But there is a dozen or so CVEs that either they're like still like there's not enough information, or they're not exploitable, or like for whatever reason the CD is just going to persist in the image month after month. And so I personally don't like having to ask security teams to get exceptions to run our software when our core demographic uh, customers are security teams. It's a bad look. So we started shipping Cribble also on ChainGuard Wolfie Linux, which very cool. If you run it through a scanner, it's consistently zero CVs, and no more exceptions are needed, and we release on ChainGuard Wolfie. And it's also like half the size too. So it's a really slimmed down version of Linux. ChainGuard's a really cool company. I recommend if folks are running into a similar issue. Very cool stuff they're doing over there.
Absolutely, yeah, I know Chinga really well. I know folks over there. I think the key takeaway for that is, you know, going back to the topic of own management, right? You cannot scan to secure, especially when you have known vulnerabilities. Like people talk about let's secure a base image. You know how difficult that is to make it functional. And to your point, some CV does not go away. So this
Definitely.
goes secure by design, secure by default, right? Having a pre-hardened image as a service by using a third party like that, you save a lot of time. So it will naturally become cleaner when you're running through your ASPM, running through your CNAP. It's way easier because the attack surface is way smaller, a lot less. Over time, it will reduce. So that's a takeaway, right?
And and it's not just okay. We're passing these container vulnerability scans. We're reducing the cell cycle too because you know I've seen POVs get delayed because of uh, our containers getting flagged by vulnerability scans. Like that needs to go away. Let's remove that from the conversation. Let's make it let's like security can't be a reason why people don't adopt Dribble. That's flat out. I am so passionate about that. Uh, and so that was just one less thing that we have to worry about now. Uh, because it was always something that was coming up with customers with high security requirements. And fortunately, the market has a solution now, so we're very happy about that.
So I was going to close on that because, again, I feel like, we could talk all day because sometimes when we preach, I remember being at shoes preaching, you have to apply innovation, right? Because what you mentioned is more of an innovative way versus the legacy process of having security, you remember those questionnaires, manual questionnaires, got to go through every time.
Yeah,
Um, I like the fact that you talk about like, and one I was going to ask, hey, how do you incentivize developers in this case in the cribble and customers, but the thing is clear the roadblocks, right? You mentioned this, put the foot down. Security cannot be the reason, right? So that's very powerful. I think that's a very good takeaway for the audience is you have to be willing to clear the roadblocks. Don't just say, okay, I'm going to train you, I'm going to educate you. But yeah, sorry, you still gotta go through all the legacy processes. Can't really help you make faster. You gotta go through all these 10,000 steps. No, actually, we're gonna actually make it easy for you.
it's really important. I mean, if you want your processes to be adopted by engineering teams, they got to be easy to adopt, right? Uh, we one of the things we do with our static analysis solution is we write custom rules, and rules, and we can also attach confidence levels to the rules too, and so we can set the threshold based off of something that is a high priority, high confidence rule, and but then like if something is a low severity and also low confidence, maybe it's not something that needs to be blocking on a PR, but we can still provide that feedback. You can continuously improve your tools and your program, and I think that's like you're never really done, right? You're always building something new, and it's important that you're better than you were yesterday.
Yeah, thank you. To summarize this, yeah, make the easy way the right way. I remember running abstract team. It could be people dedicated writing SAS rules, right? Because those things help. Otherwise, it'd be very noisy. So if you feel like you have nothing to do, then you're not doing anything right. So thank you for closing on that. So key takeaway: always find room for improvement, take action, and hopefully that's our takeaway today. Really appreciate it. We'll wrap it up here session here. Special thanks to you for diving into this topic. I think really a lot of nuggets and thank you for sharing nuggets of how you run it at Cribble, right? And hopefully audience take away of not just concept, but in practice, what worked in a very important organization. So again, thank you for your time, Rory. And for information for the audience, anything else, additional resources, you can go to our website. If you want to connect with me or Rory directly, feel free to reach out via LinkedIn. And thank you for joining us and have a great day. And Rory, thank you.
Thank you for having me. Take care.
Bye.